He, after a while, we did several publications together, and I finished my PhD like 3 years ago after being swamped in the clinical world for so many years. I finally decided I want to do my PhD, and he was extremely supportive of that. And I also got so many friends along the road. My relationship with Galen was extremely unique. And that's not because I'm unique, I'm not unique at all, but someone else not here was extremely unique. And I'm afraid I will repeat some of his characteristics, but good things can be told many times, I think, about the person. He was extremely unselfish and humble about his accomplishments. He never put himself first. He never used his success in the world, in the research field, in the life, to become something. He didn't gain from it himself, but rather he used that for other people's success. He was very inviting and including, and in many sense. For example, when I got to Duke many years ago, I was invited to talk to a lot of people there, almost in his own level, and I felt that some people older, their experienced researchers there, that they were kind of annoyed about how easy it was for medical students in Galen's team to just walk in, and he opened the whole world for you and gave you a lot of opportunities. And that was wonderful because he was so, he had his arm open for you and inviting in that sense. And also, I think you have noticed when you, in the meeting when he was standing and talking to someone and you passed by and said, well, Michael, come here and listen, this is that guy, Pablo Picasso, no, sorry. Pablo Laguna, for example, and he said, well, we are talking about this and that, and then he got you, that was his way to include people in a small sense and in a larger sense. Include people to the meetings, to be able to discuss and to create a network. He was a facilitator by doing this. Standing here talking about something and he enriched the discussions all the time, and he had a good sense of getting people together with different background. This is a typical example. We have students, we have younger people, not students anymore, and older people with a lot of research experience, engineers, physicists, we have people from companies, and medical doctors. And that's important to be able to create something. You know, he was very enthusiastic and energetic, and very curious about things. I always, working in a small hospital in Sweden, you get very busy in the clinical work, and once in a while having a contact with Galen it boosted my energy a lot, and that I think many felt. I talked to Marilyn last night about his energy, and she said he woke up like 4 o'clock in the morning, ready to go and see what has come in terms of submissions to the Journal of Electrocardiology, like a child on Christmas Eve, eager to see what's going on. That was amazing. He was very open-minded for new ideas, for new techniques. He adapted to the computer world, to the databases, to electrical, to everything in the new environment that we have seen the last years in terms of internet, Skype connections with many places around the world, making it easy for him to communicate. He was extremely caring. You were part of his family, and well, as we have heard, extremely loyal. after being in the US, I continued my medical school, and then I met my lovely wife and got stuck in this small, wonderful town, however, but not in the academic world. But so we had some discussions, we had some arguments also during the years, and he could be angry sometimes. But every time, that didn't happen very often, but if it happened, then he, like 15 minutes later, I got a long email telling me, oh, I really appreciate our relationship, and it felt like a father. You strengthen the relationship by arguing some time here and there. He was a unique brainstormer. He threw up a lot of ideas all the time, sometimes too much, and you have to adapt and don't. Sometimes you got lost because you had a lot of ideas, and you thinking about things, and sometimes when you were about to submit an article, he turned it upside down. Well, you have to do this and that instead, and you got a little bit shaken by that, and therefore it was also good for me to have other supervisors like Ola, for example, calming things down. But those ideas, everyone was very good, so you could pick that one 1 year or 2 years later and continue working on that. We have heard this before. He was a master of power naps, sharp power naps, because he could fall asleep during a session, and then he was the first to raise the hand and right spot on tell him to say the most sharp question you can ever think of. And that was one thing when you sit here with a lot of people, but it could be stressful when you had a telephone conference with him as being a young student. It was if you sat in his office and talking to some people you don't even know around the world, and then he fell asleep, and you had to continue the discussion for a minute or so, and then he woke up again. So that was sort of interesting. I can keep on a long time. He has been a wonderful person, a mentor and a friend for many of us, and for me so also. What we can do, we have to keep on his wonderful spirit in this university without walls. Thank you to Galen.
Mikael. Jag kan ta.
So, I'm Martin Ugander, and I've also had the fortunate opportunity to work with Galen for a number of years. I think I met him first in 2000 when he came to Lund as one of his trips, and he enthusiastically and characteristically had a seminar where he started asking the young medical students questions. And that question just, blossomed into a tree of unanswered research questions and projects, and all of a sudden, a lot of projects had started, and I got smitten by that infectious disease. But this photo is a screenshot that I took while Skyping with Galen. It was, I think it was last summer when they were up in Maine. And it's sort of, well, I thought it portrays him in a slightly angelic perspective. And it's also typical of my relationship with Galen. He's logged into Skype. And this is a Skype just screenshot of our conversation while we were discussing with a student from Stockholm who was in Durham, but Galen himself was in Maine, and we were coordinating across borders and with using technology. That it sort of captures a lot of things for me. Well, one, first of all, that he was always plugged in and connected to the scientific community, regardless of where he was, but also very much enjoyed the traveling and nature. But at the same time, it also represents a little bit of his, and Michael touched upon this, his technology enthusiasm, and that ties back to that first seminar, symposium, or the workshop that we had when I met him the first time, and we were discussing. This was in 2000, and Galen was an early adopter in many of technologies, and he was open and flexible to that. So we're sitting there, and he said, well, how could we manage the data collection for this? Maybe we could use a Palm Pilot. And the Palm Pilot was the technical apparatus du jour of the day, and it was very high tech, and even us students that were interested in technology, we had Palm Pilots, but he knew what a Palm Pilot was, and that was very impressive for us. So, even this old professor knows and would want to use a Palm Pilot for the data collection. And so he was always trying to do new things and pushing the envelope with new technologies, and that sort of evolved as year for year. And I thought another thing is that I had the opportunity to come down to Durham on the occasion of his retirement. And I spoke about it then, I'll just sort of echo that now, is the word Galen in Swedish, Galen, same spelling, means crazy. So we had a nickname for him in Swedish, the old lunatic, the gamla galningen, the old crazy guy. And normally these kind of affectionate nicknames aren't something that you sort of tell the person, because there's a little bit, calling somebody the old crazy guy, it's not really that good thing. But we told him that at some point. I felt that he wanted to hear that for some reason, and I took it bravely as the young student. You know what we call you? Oh, the old lunatic. And he loved it. And so you go around telling people, in Lund, they call me the old loony. And so even when he then eventually then came to my PhD defense, his poem that he read was about the lunatics and how he very much enjoyed being a lunatic with everybody else. Because if everybody's crazy, then no one really is. So that about Galen. Then he also came to Sweden this past 1 year ago to give the named lecture for the Swedish Society of Clinical Physiology and accept an award. And for that, we insisted from the Swedish Society that if you're going to give a named lecture, you actually have to give a lecture. You can't just show up and then not talk. Which was his he preferred not to have to actually give a presentation. But we had to coach him a little bit and some mentoring from below and say, all right, let's do something where, and we figured out that we would have a question and answer session where Galen would be the sort of the guest, and then the host would be represented by the youngest PhD student, Bjorn Weislander, who's not here but who he's worked with many years. So we recorded that similarly to today on the phone. And it was good enough quality, but it's up on YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and search for Galen Wagner, I think it might be the first hit. And it's an hour long, so I'm not going to show it all, but there are some excerpts of the greatest hits of Galen's thing, and I'm going to show that now.
The right side.
Yeah.
The right side.
The right side. I think I got it.
Ah.
Yeah. Different computer. Hope the internet behaves.
Say something here? I have a question. So this philosophy of clinical research training that you talked about today, I've experienced it with you and I've understood it. But would you say that this is the typical that this is shared by the administrators at the departments of the faculties of medicine, or is there a challenge there in the walls between your philosophy and that of the universities?
Yeah, it's quite a challenge, and the reason is that within the university, there's a conflict of interest. We talked about conflicts of interest between industry and university, or conflicts of interest between this and that. But one would not think that within a particular academic university, there'd be a conflict of interest with young people who are learning how to be doctors, to also learn how to be clinical investigators, to have a career in which they both doctor and do clinical research. But there is such a conflict. And the reason there's such a conflict is that the academic medical university has really two primary purposes. One is to produce academicians who are not doing clinical things, although their research would lead to things that would do so. At Duke University, Bob Lefkowitz recently got a Nobel Prize. His whole life has been in the laboratory, developing aspects of the beta receptor, very important. But Bob never did clinical research, meaning that Bob made the decision early on, he wanted to do basic research, not take care of patients at all. I made a very different decision. But Bob and I have had very different kinds of success as far as functioning at Duke University. Because for me, Bob didn't have to go outside Duke University. There were many students who over the years would come to Bob's lab. But for me, it wasn't going to happen. Because the people who really were trained to be physicians and who wanted to be physicians in their career and wanted to mainly function as physicians, then were very poorly able to have enough time to do research.
I was actually specifically thinking about the ambitions of a project from the medical school perspective as opposed to your perspective on what the student's role should be. Should it be participate or to publish? And if you see any, I was thinking about the conflicts there.
Well, it's true because in medical school, they're interested in teaching the student information. And the idea of most people at a medical school is an individual to do a research project, particularly as the first has to have a lot of information. And the belief is they don't have enough information as a student. Maybe as a student they can help out on some project. But the idea that a medical student really had the ability to take the lead role, do the majority of the design with input, publish the manuscript for themselves as opposed to first author. It just doesn't even seem possible. And most people that not just do, but I've talked, it just seems like it's an impossibility. So they don't have that expectation within that medical school. So it does become a conflict and something where it's only going to happen if I, as a faculty person, am very determined and get input from people not only in my own school but outside.
And this was a little bit, exemplifies a little bit of Galen's philosophy that I think he has been a very important contributor to, at least my view of the role of research and clinical research and the meshing and marriage of clinical work and research. In that, well, he was such a strong proponent of it but also on an administrative level, we had lots of discussions about the fight against the administrators upstairs to get them to understand that it's okay to let, I mean, just imagine this, a very senior person that gets told by the administrator, but students can't write papers as first authors. And then he's, of course they can. And that was so empowering for A, the process, and in particular, B, the student. And then one final snippet.
But only if you constrain it.
Experience. For me, it's been a really great experience.
Those hand gestures were characteristic of Galen. You notice his hands were going throughout there, not that he was talking.
A little bit of internet sludge. Here we go.
So interesting video, and I was just wondering what you feel when you are sitting here now. What are the things you are most proud of that you accomplished, and what did you not do until now and want to do?
Well, I'd like to focus on the last part of your question. Because what I really want to do with this is I want to somehow have helped to make some progress toward changing the answer to the question that I gave to Martin. Because I want to make it so that it is much more in concert with the function of the academic medical school to do this. None of what we're doing is in any way against the purpose of the academic medical school. Why should it be so difficult? Well, it is. I'm not angry about the difference. But I feel like we've only begun to scratch the surface of it. And if this program is going to be successful in the future, it's going to need to be embraced by, whether it's Duke or Karolinska or literally whatever, as a part of it. Now, the medical schools have embraced the concept of having a student have time for research. But the great majority of the students who are doing research are not having the goal of having their own project, getting it finished, and publishing. So if that could be included as the purpose of the medical school. And what does it mean downstream? Sure, the medical school needs to produce some people like Bob Lefkowitz and others who are excellent basic investigators. But also, the medical school, medical center, to be optimally successful, must produce individuals who are both doing their clinical work and doing clinical research as much as they possibly can for as much of a career as they can do it. So somehow, to have that become more their goal, not mine. I mean, what does it matter if you have X number of people who just sort of have this goofball goals? That doesn't fit. So that's why I focus on the answer to the second part of your question, which is what I feel that I hope might happen. But I realize that there's so many reasons why not. Because there's so many other goals that the academic medical center must do. They don't have to do this. This is sort of, they might do it, but they don't have to do this. There's so many other things they have to do to survive and thrive. Well, this is kind of like, as you say, icing on a cake or something. It's certainly not the cake.
So, I mean, on the one hand, we all, many of us remember Galen and treasure memories of him as a friend and mentor. But on the other hand, possibly from his own words, maybe a part of his legacy will be greater than the person, and hopefully influencing medical schools and medical school curricula around the world to integrate this combined clinical clinician researcher role into the philosophy of how to run a medical school. I think that's a message that for me resonates greater than the person Galen, and it's something I certainly appreciate about. Yeah, thank you.
Pablo?
Well, I just want to say some words that at times it helps to me to write it down, to organize and to think on that. And I have done several times in my life, and I think it works for me. So that's what I have done with Galen, that I wanted to be saying what I felt about him. So I happen to know Galen at Lund Computers in Cardiology meeting in 1997, and since then it was always obvious to me he had a terrific engine, using one of his favorite adjectives. The meeting at Leif's house was an extraordinary example of how to push ahead initiative, even if the path ahead was far from clear. Just having the clear conviction the path is somewhere there. There are so many features in Galen's personality that I did observe in the collaboration over the years, and I would like to emphasize, as a tribute to his memory and to the universal dimension of science, knowledge, and humanity he always expressed and promoted. Galen was very good in turning off the mechanism of a priori bias that we used to have as humans, and his personality, sorry, I lose the line, and his perception about someone he met for the first time was always positive, by default allowing people to show with facts the extent of their ideas, projects, initiatives, etc. This is definitely one way Galen exercised his universality principles, worded many times of his University Without Walls life project. Having known Galen, all of us know mentoring was one of his favorite activities, being a reference for many students. He pushed the mentoring concept ahead, and he practiced the mentoring of mentors as a way to extend further his ambition to cross the frontiers of knowledge much more than what you can do by yourself, and he did it with real impact worldwide. Galen was very good in looking for paths different from those already explored. We know this is a difficult and risky strategy, as the inertia of the well-established routes tends to redirect the driver to the well-trodden path. Galen was aware of this physical law and always tried to persist on the search for other paths, which at times ended in closed roads, but other times opened the new routes to unexplored destinations. This requires getting out of the comfort area, but Galen knew this is the price to pay to arrive to new destinations. The multidisciplinarity was also a dimension in which he was a deep believer, and he mentored many of us as engineers to pursue it. Just looking into the particular case of our group, his leadership opened a large set of studies bridging engineering with the clinics, where results has been far more relevant to the society than they would have been without the deep involvement of experts from several sides. We were very fortunate to know him. We will miss him from many sides. He was generous enough to share his way of being, his learning, his thoughts, and we are lucky because of that. He has not gone. He remains in our developments, both as researchers and as human. We will keep and transmit so many things we learned from him, his inspiration and his vision for science. Many thanks, Galen. Pablo from the group of Zaragoza.
So I will round off this session reflecting very little on mentorship or research, but instead on some other aspects of Galen and how he came across to us. And I knew him since about 1989, and during that summer, 89 and 1990, I spent week or weeks in his house in Durham, so that's how we started actually, even though we met a little before that. And coming to his house the first time, he met me at the at the airport in a rather run-down old Toyota, and he brought me over to his house, and I was tired as always after having come from Europe, so I wanted to go to bed rather early, and then I said to him, in the morning then, do we go together to your office, or how do we do it? And he said, well, I think I'll maybe go over earlier than you, and you can take the other car that I have. And so I said, well, you have to give me the key then, so that I can take the car over. And he said, well, the key is in the car. Okay. So where is the car then? Do you have a key to your garage? No, he said, it's in the driveway. So quite different from many other people. He had a second car in the driveway with a key. And I said, okay, what make is the car? And he said, it's a Ford Mustang. So I was going to drive the Mustang to work, and he took the Toyota. So that was one of the first experiences. When living and staying in his house, I noticed that Galen was a hoarder. I don't know if you know what a hoarder is. It's one person who knows. Hoarder means that you collect things. And one of the first things that I noticed that he collected was VHS tapes. That was the only method that you can record. You could record from TV at that time. And every morning he would put on the VHS recorder and program it to record movies that were playing on different channels. And typically he recorded 3 or 4 movies every day. And so in one of his rooms he had about 1,000 VHS tapes on bookshelves. Instead of books, there were these VHS tapes. And then he cataloged them. So he had a card system where he could find the movies that he was recording. So these and so many other aspects of his personality were quite different from myself, and quite different from other people that I had known. Other occasions when he downplayed things was, for example, in '96, Elizabeth and I were visiting during a couple of weeks, and our daughter was there, and Jonas Pettersson from Lund. And one day Galen said, I'll take you out to a restaurant tonight. And so Jonas and I, we discussed, well, do you think this is going to be a fancy restaurant, or what's it going to be like? And so I said, well, we'll ask Galen. And so we were thinking how we would dress. So I asked Galen, how should we dress? Is it a fancy place? Or no, he said it's out in the countryside. It's an old farmhouse, and so you can dress however you like. So then we were driving. We were riding in his car, and took about an hour, I guess, or maybe more. And we arrived at this place. Looked, as you said, like a farmhouse from a distance. But driving up the driveway, we noticed that it was not a typical farmhouse, because when we came closer, there were nicely clad people coming there to greet us with an umbrella and stuff. So it was like a very luxurious place, and even more luxurious when you came inside, with a lot of servants, most of them Europeans who were training there. And to make a long story short there, I read afterwards in Newsweek that this 5 million state of North Carolina, 5 million inhabitants, that's one of the 2 finest restaurants in the whole state. So I guess that Jonas and I were a bit underdressed, but we were served anyway. It was commented upon the early mornings, and Galen and I, or the possibility of living without an alarm clock and getting up at a set time. We made a kind of a sport almost to meet very early, and I could meet very early because I typically would come from Europe. I would go to bed early and be ready by 4 o'clock in the morning. So Galen said on one occasion, let's meet in the morning for breakfast. And I said, what time does the breakfast room open? He said probably around 7. So I said just jokingly, let's meet at 6. And he said fine. And he was staying at a hotel a few miles down the road. And I thought, well, he won't come at 6. And at 6 o'clock, then he knocked on the door, and we started to working. So each time we pushed this back further. So next time I said, let's 5:15 would be okay. And so we made this again. And but when he came to Europe, I was not all that keen on eating at 5:15. 3 years ago, Galen was awarded the title honorary doctor at Lund University. We had kind of promoted him in the faculty, and he was selected by the faculty. And he and Marilyn came. There were a lot of preparations across phone lines and so on for all these various rigmaroles that you have to go through. And one of the things that went into kind of a bet between my wife Elizabeth and myself was, do you think, I said, do you think that Galen would actually wear these polished black leather shoes with a fancy attire that you have to wear in the church for being awarded or an honorary doctorship? And Elizabeth said, no, I don't think so. And I said, well, I think he will, for once, he will accommodate. And the day came, and he put on these things about bow tie, and there was starch shirt and whatever, the tails and so on. And then his brown suede shoes. And so he was the only one with the brown suede shoes during the procession of 300 people to and from the church, and walking up the stairs and being awarded that and all that. So Galen was very different. We all appreciated him, and we all miss him very much.
Before we get started, we thought maybe we'd just open it up to anyone who want to make comments, but I think it's 9:10, we probably better move along. But the two quick announcements. In the past, Galen started a program whereby people who presented here could submit papers to the Journal of Electrocardiology, and they would then be peer-reviewed and hopefully published the following year. And I think that tradition is going to continue. In case you may want to say something about how people can send in papers after the meeting today.